Good day everyone, I am Roman Ifan bin Abdul Latif and today I'll be reporting on inflation in Malaysia. So, what is inflation? Inflation is the general increase in the price of goods and service over time. When the price rise, people need to spend more money to buy the same item, meaning the purchasing power of the money decrease. Over the past 15 years, Malaysia has generally maintained to low and stable inflation rate around 2% and 3%. However, in 2020, the country experienced deflation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As the consumer spending and economic activity declined, as the economy recovered, inflation rose and peaked at 3.3% in 2020, mainly because of the higher food, fuel, and transportation costs. Since then, inflation has moderated to around 2%. Inflation is measured using the Consumer Price Index or CPI, which tracks changes in the price of the everyday goods and service. In Malaysia, the Department of Statistics in Malaysia or DOSM publish the CPI every month to monitor change in the cost of living. Thank you.
Good evening. Today we will look at how inflation affects Malaysia. The social effects of inflation.
Because things are so expensive, young couples are waiting longer to get married and having fewer kids. Birth rates have hit a record low. Food prices have also shot up, which is why thousands of shops are now offering cheap menu rahmah meals just to help people afford to eat. It's not just food. Our hospitals are struggling, with wait times reaching up to 12 hours due to messes. At the same time, private medical insurance costs have jumped up as much as 50%, leaving many scared they won't be able to afford healthcare. Our paychecks aren't just stretching as far. Prices are rising faster than salaries, making life really tough for everyday families. On top of that, as the ringgit drops, many of our best workers, like doctors, are leaving for better paycheck in other countries. From putting food on the table to losing our best talent, inflation is hitting us hard. I'm Mama Asif. Thanks for watching.
Not only does inflation affect us socially, it also affects us economically.
Here with me, economy expert Dr. Christina from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Before we discuss the causes, could you briefly explain the type of inflation experienced in Malaysia?
Certainly, there are two main types of inflation that contributed to Malaysia's inflation, namely demand pull inflation and cost push inflation.
Great. So, what is demand pull inflation and how did it occur in Malaysia?
So, demand pull inflation occurs when aggregate demand grows faster than the economy's ability to supply goods and services. So in Malaysia, it was mainly driven by expansionary fiscal and monetary policies. High government spending and lower taxes increase consumer spending and investment, while lower interest rates and increase in the money supply encourage more borrowing and spending. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Malaysia experienced a strong economic recovery, with consumer spending and business investment increasing rapidly. As a result, demand grew faster than supply. Inflationary pressure increased during 2022 and 2023. Although Malaysia's inflation rate slowed from 3.3% in 2022 to 2.4% in 2023, core inflation remained at 3%, indicating that demand side pressures were still present.
Thank you for explaining demand pull inflation. Now, let's move on to the second type. Could you explain what cost push inflation is?
Of course, cost push inflation happens when the cost of producing goods and services increases. As production costs rise, business increase their selling prices to maintain their profit margins.
Cost push inflation in Malaysia.
In Malaysia, cost push inflation was mainly caused by higher energy and fuel prices, rising raw material costs, higher global commodity prices, and the increase in the minimum wage. For example, the Russia-Ukraine war pushed up global commodity prices, while the stronger US dollar increased the cost of imported raw materials, fuel, and food. At the same time, the increase in Malaysia's minimum wage raised labour costs for businesses. As businesses face higher production costs, many pass these additional costs on to consumers by increasing their selling price. As a result, Malaysia's headline inflation reached 2.8%, while core inflation increased from 1.7% to 2.5% in the second quarter of 2022.
Hello, today we are here with Ms. Rina, a bank negara officer who will talk about how Malaysia manages inflation. Thank you for being here, Ms. Rina. Ms. Rina, can you explain how Malaysia manages inflation?
Sure, in Malaysia, inflation is controlled in three main ways: through fiscal policy, monetary policy, and also direct government actions. All of these work together to help keep prices stable and make sure the cost of living doesn't rise too quickly.
Can you enlighten us how fiscal policy helps control inflation?
Fiscal policy is basically how the government uses taxes and spending to help manage the economy and control inflation. Starting with taxation, Malaysia introduced the Goods and Services Tax or GST in 2015 to increase government revenue by taxing most goods and services. However, in 2018, GST was replaced with the Sales and Services Tax or SST, which only applies to selected goods and services. Then, in 2025, SST was expanded further while essential goods remain exempt to help keep the cost of basic necessities affordable. Besides taxation, government spending also plays an important role. One example is fuel subsidies. Back in 2014, Malaysia began reducing blanket fuel subsidies to better manage government spending. Later, the government introduced targeted subsidies such as the Budi Madani DSL subsidy in 2024, where only eligible groups receive assistance. This makes government spending more efficient while still supporting those who need it most. So by managing both taxation and government spending, fiscal policy helps keep inflation at a stable level.
What role Bank Negara Malaysia plays in controlling inflation?
Bank Negara Malaysia plays an important role by managing the money supply and influencing how much people and business borrow and spend. One of the main tools it uses is open market operations or OMO. Through OMO, Bank Negara Malaysia buys or sells government securities to control the amount of money in the banking system. For example, in 2024, BNM absorbed excess liquidity from the market, meaning there was less money available for spending. This helps reduce inflationary pressure. Besides that, BNM also used the Statutory Reserve Requirement or SRR. When the SRR is increased, banks have to keep more money with BNM instead of lending it out. As a result, there is less money available for loans, so borrowing and spending decrease, which helps low inflation. Another important tool is the overnight policy rate, as known as OPR. When the OPR increases, borrowing becomes more expensive. This encourages people and business to spend less, helping to reduce demand in the economy. The OPR is adjusted based on economic conditions. For example, it was increased in 2014, though during the COVID-19 pandemic, raised again in 2023 as inflation increased and later adjusted to 2.75% in 2025. Finally, Bank Negara Malaysia also applies selective credit control. Under this approach, banks are required to assess a person's income and existing debts before approving a loan. By making lending more responsible, it helps prevent excessive borrowing and spending, which also helps keep inflation under control.
Thank you for the explanation, Ms. Rina. Now moving on, could we hear from Mr. Ashraf, officer from Bank Negara, regarding direct control measures used in Malaysia?
Absolutely. The government used several direct control measures to help keep inflation under control. One of these pricing policy where the government control the price of certain essential goods, for example, full price like RON 95 and diesel are kept stable. During festive season, the government also set maximum price for items like chicken, egg to prevent sudden price increase. Besides control price, the government also protect local farmer through a price floor system for paddy. This means farmers are guaranteed a minimum price for their harvest even if market price fall. To support this system, Bernas also buy paddy from farmers when needed. Another measure is encouraging people to save more. This is done through the Employees Provident Fund or EPF. Since workers contribute part of their salary every month, they have less money available to spend immediately. As a result, overall demand in the economy is reduced while help ease inflation pressure. Finally, the government also take action against hoarding. It prevents people or business from stockpiling essential goods like cooking oil, as this can create artificial shortage and cause price to rise. For example, in 2024, authorities says illegally store cooking oil to help keep the supply stable and prevent unnecessary price increase.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts and insight, Mr. Ashraf.
It was my pleasure.
To conclude, inflation remains an important economic challenge in Malaysia. Although the inflation rate has decreased in recent years, the price of essential goods and services are still high, affecting the cost of living for many households. Inflation reduces consumer purchasing power and increase business costs, which can slow economic growth. To manage this, Bank Negara Malaysia has adjusted the overnight policy rates, while the government has introduced targeted subsidy, cash assistance and price control measures. Overall, Malaysia has managed inflation reasonably well, but continuous efforts are needed to strengthen the economy, maintain price stable, and improve the quality of life for Malaysians. Thank you.